The river circle. Where does the river go? Asked a small girl standing down by the shore of a huge river. From the tops of the mountains to the bottom of the sea, and then back to the mountains again, replied her father, standing next to her, staring out over the water. But how can it possibly get back to the tops of the mountains when water always flows down and away, and the river only goes one way? She asked. The river is a circle, he told her. If the river did not go back to the mountains would run out of water, and the river would no longer flow. Looking out at the wide, deep river, she understood how much water was moving by. She saw that she could stand there all day and all night for months into years, watching, and the river would always be going by, so wide and so deep, and forever in its motion. Surely, she thought, Father must be telling the truth, that the water must go back around somehow, or else surely its source would have gone dry long ago. Since before even her grandmother was born, the river had been going by without stopping. But she still did not understand how, if rivers truly came from the mountains, how they could go back there. Waterfalls and rivers all went downhill, and she had never seen one going back up. Come, sit down on these stones, and I will tell you how the river makes its circle, said her father, seeing she was confused. And so they both sat down on the most comfortable rocks they could find, and he began to tell the story. The river is a circle, as most things are. It has no end and no beginning. It is only water, an endless circle of water, and a long gray cloud high up in the edges of the sky, where it starts to melt into space, floating on the winds of the atmosphere's brink. Tiny pieces of the mist and billows begin to fall down to earth below, and as they fall, the wind makes them into snowflakes, each one different, a flurry of the tiniest things ever made solid, the delicate ghost white angel forms of raindrops born beyond the places where rain can stay wet, given to the world to feed all of the rivers and lakes. High in the tops of the mountains, the sun breaks through the clouds and shines down on their shiny white peaks. There, along the edges of the great fields of ice and snow, tiny drops begin to melt and dribble one by one over the gray rocks, soon joining together to become small trickles of water. Then, as many trickles all find the same path down the mountain, they become a stream, splishing and splashing its way ever down the faces to the valleys below, running over the great boulders and cliffs until the water itself carves its way into the rock, into the earth, forming pools and waterfalls, carving even the deep dark canyons that wind their way through the mountains. Eventually, all that trickling stream finds its way down into the forest below, a parade of water drops, snowflakes melted and running downhill as fast as they can, splish splash until they meet other streams on their inevitable path to the sea. Sometimes many streams join together and become a mighty river. The more streams, the more melted snowflakes, the bigger the river. Its course across the land, feeding all the green fields and animals along its banks, carrying many things away with it, on out and ever down to the ocean. The river flows deep, currents churn, the ages wash its stones down from the mountains, rounding them over 1,000 floods until they polish down one day into sand. Imagine all the places and things the river passes by on its way, all the lands that it knows in its travels, the tall trees overhead dropping their leaves in fall to flutter down and float along the surface, small ships sailing downstream. The river carries all away. There in the shallows, high upon the hills, where the water is still young and meek, and the sunlit pools trickling between the trees, small eggs hatch out into the gravel, the tiniest whispers of a silver splash. They are baby fish who will someday begin their long swim out to sea to become large and full grown. The river carries all away. See the hunched over form of an old lady standing there on a gray day as she tosses a ring from the bridge. Where she stands, it falls, turns, and glints once, a golden wink before it splashes and disappears below. The river carries all away. A young boy on a grassy bank, fishing pole leaned against a little forked stick, summer breeze blowing ripples across the pool of cool water before him, plucking petals from a bright white daisy and counting his way past She Loves Me Not, back to She Loves Me. The petals fall, catch a path on the stream, and are quickly swept off. The river carries all away. The stick tossed for a dog and abandoned, just a little too far out to swim to. The old man spreading dust to dust and ashes to ashes from the end of an old wooden dock. Memories drifting off with the tide. The footprints left in the muddy shore by all the water's visitors, the sands of all the beaches it touches, the lost fisherman's bobber, all taken away by the flow, for the river carries all away. Every raindrop collected and carried downstream to its destiny, some to be drank by the hungry reaching roots of a million plants and trees, some to flow out into the huge lakes and ponds, places where frogs sit on lily pads, calm glassy surfaces with only the occasional dragonfly buzz and turtle splash. Then the river runs on again through mountain gorges where tree shade and fern ceilings hide it from the sunshine, and it crashes and roars over tall cliffs, and we call it a waterfall. And some are so high the river falls into mist and makes rainbow clouds on its way down, a billion diamonds and crystals splattering into the pool below. All along it goes, nothing can stop its path. If the mountain is too high and too strong to carve a path through, then it just goes around, and joins with others to become stronger, until finally it spills out into the sea, and the mountains of the world melting their snow, and the rivers running like blue and aqua green snakes out across the land to fill the great oceans. The oceans are where all the waters go, every teardrop, every splash of water balloon, every melted piece of ice, every creeping creek that seeps its slow slither across the land, flows and goes out to the sea. From far out in space we are blue, the water covering most of the world, the land just islands in its vastness, the moon pushing and pulling on the depths, lifting and dropping the tides of the world like a great pulse from a heart. And as we spin day to night in our huge circle around the sun, it glares out at us with its scorching stare and shines its immense heat upon the seas of our globe, the waters warming in the solar embrace, the waves cresting and frothing, spraying their mist into the air. And in that air, where cold meets warm and ocean meets sky, a magic thing happens, and the water itself breathes out its salty breath, a fog that floats and hovers there above the surface, its gray mist, just a million tiny drops of ocean drifting with the wind, now as they begin their next part of the circle. Now ever up and up they rise and gather, and some go clear up above the hills as the wind blows them on land. Others creep along the ground in the form of soupy fog. Out over the land the high clouds drift along, spilling shade into the valleys and trickling the treetops with dew, blowing with the wind over cities and farms and forests and rivers below, until finally they reach the high tips of the mountains and pour their rain and snowflakes down to feed the start of the circle again. The man's voice lowered as he finished the story. The girl gazed at the river. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the lap of tiny waves on the shore. The evening sun glimmered on 1,000 little ripples and complexities of deep thought. "I want to follow the river some day and see all that it sees," the girl said after some time. "Yes, child, and you shall. We all shall. One way or the other, we are all made of water, and we are all part of the circle." River roll, dreamer drifting off. River roll down deep, take these little dreamers off to sleep. River flow, flow far away, out under open skies, where free birds fly and nighttime's just a place to rest, a place to play, in open waters and outer space. Swim through the clouds like fish and dance with stars on the moon. Float way up in the ocean's waves, then slip away and sleep, for morning is coming soon. River roll, roll over smooth stones, till something smoother still they turn to sand. Forever flows the current's path, cuts its long, deep grooves across the land. Slow river glide, where leaf and dream might slide, where turtles and fish spend their lives, where the world swirls and whirls below, and boils and toils with secret flows, that on the surface hardly show, just the lap of the wind and the waves it blows. Roll, river, roll, out into the deep. Roll, river, roll, carry these little dreamers far off to sleep.